What if I told you? There once lived a young girl in Nagaland who villagers believed was no ordinary human. Some said she was a giant in spirit, some whispered she had magical powers, and others swore she was chosen by the gods to protect her people. Her name was Gaidinliu, and even the mighty British Empire trembled at her courage. Long ago, in the hills of Nagaland, when the villages were still surrounded by thick forests and mountain mist, a girl was born in 1915 in a small village called Nungkao. Her name was Gaidinliu. At first, she looked like any other child. She played with the other kids, helped her parents in the fields, and laughed like any ordinary girl. But as she grew, the elders noticed something different. Gaidinliu was strong, stronger than most boys her age. She could climb the steepest hills without resting, carry heavy bundles of firewood with ease, and even her voice carried a power that demanded attention. Her grandmother would often say, "This girl is not ordinary. She has been sent by the spirits to guide our people." One day, when Gaidinliu was still a teenager, a man named Jadonang visited her village. Jadonang was a spiritual leader, a prophet among the Rongmei Nagas. He spoke of a vision. He said the gods had told him to lead his people against foreign rule and bring back the old faith of the Nagas. Gaidinliu listened to his words, and something stirred deep inside her. She felt a fire burning in her chest. She knew her destiny was tied to this vision. So, at just 13 years old, she left her family and followed Jadonang. Under Jadonang's guidance, Gaidinliu learned not only about faith and rituals, but also about bravery and leadership. She watched as Jadonang spoke fearlessly against the British, who had taxed the Nagas heavily and destroyed their way of life. But tragedy struck. The British arrested Jadonang, accusing him of rebellion. They executed him in 1931. The people wept. Their leader was gone. But in that moment of sorrow, something powerful happened. The young teenage girl, Gaidinliu, rose and declared, "Jadonang may be gone, but his spirit lives within me. I will not let our people be crushed. I will carry on his fight." And so began the legend of Rani Gaidinliu. She was barely 16, yet she began organizing young men and women into groups of fighters. They trained in the forests, carried spears, bows, and arrows, and secretly planned ambushes against the British. But what made Gaidinliu even more extraordinary was not just her courage. It was the way people spoke of her. Villagers whispered that she could predict attacks before they happened. Some claimed she could speak to the spirits of the forest, and the spirits warned her of danger. Her followers called her Rani, the Queen, because she was not just a leader, she was their protector. News of her growing influence spread quickly. The British officials were furious. How could a young tribal girl challenge their empire? They sent soldiers into the hills to hunt her down. But each time, Gaidinliu and her fighters vanished into the forests, striking at night and disappearing by dawn. The British called her the Naga Queen, both in anger and respect. For the first time, the colonial rulers realized they were not fighting just a girl. They were fighting a legend. But no legend is without its darkest hour. In 1932, the British surrounded one of the villages where Gaidinliu was hiding. Her fighters tried to protect her, but the British forces were too many. Gaidinliu was captured. The people cried when they saw her being taken away in chains. The British sentenced her to life imprisonment. She was only 17 years old. For 14 long years, Gaidinliu remained in prison. The British thought the fire in her would die, but it didn't. Inside those cold prison walls, she prayed, she dreamed, and she planned. She knew her people still believed in her. She knew her story was not over. When India gained independence in 1947, Rani Gaidinliu was finally released. She stepped out of the prison, no longer a girl, but a woman who had carried the spirit of her people through suffering and struggle. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister, met her and gave her the title Rani, the Queen, out of respect for her courage and leadership. Rani Gaidinliu lived many more years, guiding her people, preserving their traditions, and reminding them of the strength hidden in their roots. Some saw her as a freedom fighter. Some remembered her as a prophetess. And others whispered she was more than human, born with the spirit of the giants. But one thing was certain: she became a living legend. So the next time you hear the name Rani Gaidinliu, remember, this was not just a girl from a small village. She was a storm. She was the spirit of the Nagas. And she proved that even the mightiest empire can tremble before the courage of one determined soul.